our Finance Clinic show, and I am Dr. Pardon Mwansa, your host. At Finance Clinic, we attempt to do at least 3 things. We share with you signs you must watch for that will indicate to you that you are financially getting into trouble. And then once we have shared that, we then attempt to share with you strategies that you can use for you to manage your finances well. And obviously we bring in testimonies from people and public opinions for them to share their views on the topic of the day. And so today let me invite you to one of the signs. One of the signs that you are getting into financial problems has to do with your debt-income ratio. If it starts to go above 35%, then you are in trouble. When your debt-income ratio starts to go above 35%. Let me explain this concept. When you go to a bank to ask for a loan, the banks will ask you many questions. One of the questions they will ask you is, how much do you get per month? What's your gross income? You will tell them. Then they will ask you, do you rent a house? You will tell them, yes, I rent. Or, yes, I pay a mortgage. They will try to find out what are your regular debts or payments to which your income, your monthly income is already committed to. What they are trying to find out from you is your capacity to service the loan that you want to get. The way it works is, if a bank sees that your capacity to manage or service a loan is weak because your percentage of what you owe is higher than 35% just going up, then they won't give you the loan. But banks can also be very clever in a way. They will ask you, do you have an asset that you can give as collateral? Obviously, if you say you have a house and they go, they see it and it's a good house, they look at the loan you are trying to ask for, it's a small amount or it's manageable, they will go ahead and give you a loan on the strength of the fact that if you don't pay, then they will get your house and use it to pay the debt. Normally, if they give you a loan when your debt-income ratio is bad, they have actually, in a way, almost trapped you, because the truth is you will fail to pay your loan. So they will come for your house. So watch for your debt-income ratio, which you can simply calculate by knowing your total debt obligation per month and then your total income. Don't overcommit yourself to payments, because you have other expenses you have to live with every month, and if you are overcommitted, you will be in trouble. Having said this, our topic for today is entitled Budgeting for Expenses, Allocating Income for Expenses. Today's topic, over which I want to now make this presentation, is budgeting for expenses, which is the art of allocating your income to specific expenses. Now, I want to carry you from where we began. When we began, I first of all talked about financial goals and the role of financial goals in money management. Budgeting does not stand alone. As a matter of fact, budgeting is an expression of how you now want to attain your financial goals. So again, I will always come back to this. Your starting point is to know what are your financial goals. Goals such as, I want to send my child to a university and I will be paying for it. That's a financial goal. It's a goal like, I want to buy a bicycle in 2 years. It's a goal like, I want to start a business in 2 years. I want to accumulate a total of 5,000 as my starting capital. Those are goals. In budgeting, you always keep your goals as the first step. Now, I already shared that in a budget, you have the income section. As you can see on the screen, the goals that you want to attain are now going to be realized using your income. So you now go to the second step, which we talked about in my last presentation. That is where you now identify your sources of income and the amounts you will get, and you know your financial capacity by knowing your total income. When you know your total income, then you come to writing down your expenses. There is a basic principle in budgeting, and that basic principle is, as you can see on the screen, your total income should be equal to your total expenses. That is called a balanced budget. When your total income is less than your total expenses, you are in trouble. If your income is more than your total expenses, celebrate, because you have more money to save. Having explained this background, let me now share with you what is extremely important for you to remember when you are budgeting for expenses. I would like us to discuss now general budgeting expenses. What are general budgeting expenses? These are items that you need to put on your budget. Maybe let me use another word. You need to seriously consider putting these things I am going to share on your budget, because these things are so important. This list is not something I have generated. This list is a result of a lot of observations in the financial management world, a lot of counsel and experiences that we give to people when we talk to them on finance management. So this is a very important list. Let's go to number one on the list. The number one on the list is God. Now, let me say this. Why is it important for you to start with God on your budget? The reason is simple. God helps you to generate the income you generate. Number one, God gives you health. He sustains you. God gives you life. God gives you the strength to generate income. When you are budgeting, it is important for you to have an expression of your gratitude to Him that gives you life and sustains you and gives you the strength to generate your income. So under this one first item, and I placed it as topmost because when you consider God as your first option or first budgeting item, you are saying, all the blessings that God gives me, they are the things that make me even do what I do. There are three areas under God. that I would like you to consider. Number one is tithing. Tithing is taught as a principle in the Bible for which the major expression is to acknowledge that God owns everything on earth, including you as a person. And when you make income, it is because He gave you the strength, He gave you the life, He gave you the abilities. Now let me pause. Even those who do not acknowledge God in their life do know that there is a higher power that enables them to live. And it's good to acknowledge gratitude for that. Secondly, it's offerings. And then third, it's charity. In the world in which we live, there will always be people who struggle, people who don't have the means to live. It is good in your budget to remember humanity. The second item on budgeting is savings. You will realize I have put savings next to God. Why? That is because savings are so important to your money management because of a simple philosophical fact. What is that fact? Right now, the only thing you can tell about what is going on is what you know. You can't tell what is coming tomorrow. Savings is the ability to save some money that you can use tomorrow in case of unexpected emergencies. Savings also will include saving for your retirement. Savings will also include saving for your financial goals. You want to send your child to school, what do? You've got to save. You want to buy a car, what do? You've got to save. So savings is an entire branch, an entire component of budgeting that you need to keep in mind. Now let me say this. If you do not budget for savings, you have literally trapped yourself. Tomorrow, when an emergency will come and you don't have any savings, you will be compelled to borrow. And remember, we have not yet discussed debt or borrowing, which we will later, but each time you get money as a loan, as a debt, you have made your financial life more complex because debt is expensive. So you need to know that savings is what helps you avoid falling into debt. Now, at some point in the future, in our future presentations, I'll talk about business debt or a business loan, because there is a difference between a consumer loan, money you get for your day-to-day consumption and borrow to live, and money you borrow for business purposes. I'll talk about that later. But number one, God. Number two, savings. Now, let me say something before I move away from savings. How do you write savings in your budget? You just write it, savings, you give it an amount, and when you get your money, you take that saving amount to the bank as if you are paying for your loan. Yes, you take your savings to the bank as if you are paying for a loan. Now, the third component is that of insurance. At a future topic, I'll talk about insurance in details. For now, I am just mentioning God, savings, insurance as examples of what you need to put or include on your budget. Insurance. Insurance is a monthly cost, or in most cases, a cost of a period that covers those items that you risk when you use them. I'll give you an example. Before I came to record this show, right now, I was driving from where I slept at the hotel. I got to a place where the lights stopped, and I was driving my vehicle, my Hilux. All of a sudden, a person came from the side and pushed their way. Unfortunately, they missed and just hit me on the side. That happened today as I was coming. When they hit me on the side, I stopped. They stopped. I came out of the door to now see how we will handle the situation. They immediately pulled back and sped off. And I couldn't follow them because I was outside the car. Now, my car, when I looked, has a big dent on the side. The question is, I can either now bear my own cost to fix the car, or I can just go ahead and report to the police, which I will do, and then report to insurance for insurance coverage. You need to insure items that you cannot easily lose or risk. Number 4, debt. You need to budget for debt payment. One reason why many people do not pay their debt perpetually is because they do not put debt payment on their budget. You need to put debt payment on your budget, and if possible, you write down who you owe, how much you will be paying them. Put it on your budget so that you cover debt. Obviously, the goal of every good money manager is to be debt-free. But until you are debt-free, it is important for you to budget for your debt. The next item on budgeting is fixed expenses. There are certain routine expenses that come monthly by virtue of your existing. Those are called fixed because they are of a fixed nature. For example, your rentals for your house. You may be renting a house where they charge you $1,500 or whatever the amount is that they charge you. That's a fixed expense. You need to put it in your budget. Another example of a fixed expense is, for example, if you do have a loan at the bank. That, while it is a debt, it's also a fixed expense because it has a specific amount you're supposed to pay. Fixed expenses are fixed and they do not change easily. The last expense that I would like to list is flexible expenses. Flexible expenses are expenses that vary month by month. For example, when our children return from college or from boarding schools, the expense for the month they are at home on food will shoot up. And yet when they go to school, the food expense will come down, obviously assuming they are in boarding school. The point is, when it comes to budgeting for food, it is a flexible expense because you may not spend the exact amount every month. So you list this under flexible expense. The same goes with water bills, electrical bills. These are flexible expenses that you can spend much this month, another next month, they change. Now let me comment on this list before I go, or before I move to the next point. This list that covers these areas: God, savings, insurance, debt, fixed expenses, and flexible expenses, is an important list for you to keep in mind, because if you miss out any of these, you might actually be missing out something extremely important for you to know and budget for. Okay, now, as a way of moving now from this list of expenses, let me now discuss why many people, in spite of budgeting, fail to monitor or to administer a budget. So let's look at how to kill your budget. Yes, how to kill your budget. What kills your budget? You know what kills your budget, or killing a budget, is where you come to a point where you had made a budget, but then you realize you are not following it, so you could as well just let it die. That's killing a budget. Unfortunately, when you kill your budget, you have just killed one of the most important and crucial steps in financial management. So what are some of the ways to kill a budget? Number one, lack of communication to family members. Let me talk about that. When you live in a home, you have a wife, or you have a husband, or you have children, or you have dependents. But then you write the budget, and maybe you wrote the budget alone. Or when you wrote the budget, your wife was not very involved, or your husband was not very involved. What will happen is, because nobody knows what the budget is, when it comes to spending, when you give an allocation to money, or when you give your wife money for food, she will spend all of it in one day. And you don't blame her if you did not communicate to her that our budget limits are these amounts. If you don't communicate your budget limits to those that you live with, they will spend without being sensitive to the limit. This is why most budgets are killed. Most budgets are killed because people don't communicate the budget. Obviously, you don't go about giving a budget to everybody and making it a job. But you basically communicate to your spouse at least, so that she or he knows the limits you have in your spending. Please, if you don't communicate with your spouse, even regularly, and remind one another, you will kill your budget. This is the number one killer to budgets. When budgets are not communicated, people don't follow them. Number two, impulse buying. You know, there are people who will go to a mall. They have gone to buy salt and sugar, basic groceries. But when they get there, they see that there is an advert for a TV, there is an advert for a football for their child, there is an advert, there are adverts all over. And instead of sticking to their budget and to the things that took them to the store, they get excited. No, this thing is on sale. It's on sale. You know, tomorrow it won't be on sale. They justify. So instead of just focusing on what's on the budget, they fill their trolley with a lot of things that were not meant to be there. Obviously, you know what has happened. What has happened then is that their budget has been totally thrown out, because now they are just spending without consciousness to the budget. Many husbands And please, I'm not picking on wives. It's just because wives are the ones who generally go to buy things, the groceries. But many husbands register in counseling that it would appear that their spouse seems to just buy things. I guess this is an opportunity for the wives to sense and understand that it's important to follow a budget, especially if you had participated or if you were a partner in developing that budget. There is no need for you to want to buy everything that's on sale. Remember, shops are meant to entice you to buy them, to buy their goods. And if you are going to go by what's on sale, you will kill your budget. The next budget killer is easy access to money. Easy access to money is if, for example, the simple example is, you are going to buy, and what you wanted to buy, what you wanted to buy won't cost more than 500 kwacha. But what do? You take 1,000 kwacha. You have just trapped yourself, because when you get there, your mind is telling you, even though what you want to buy is for 500 kwacha, your mind is telling you, you have 1,000 kwacha. So you can spend it. Because you have access to money, then you find yourself easily spending that money. The worst thing, please, at some time in the future, I'll talk about cash management. The biggest mistake people make when it comes to killing a budget is to have access to money. When you have money that you are carrying, trust me, that money will go and you won't even know where it went, but you are the one who spent it anyway. It's just that when money is there, you will even become generous and give where you should not give, because you have access to money. Now these days, this has become complicated, because if you carry a bank card, a Barclays bank card, for example, if you carry your card to a store, you have literally carried your bank to the store. And if you are not careful, because there is money in the bank, you will just spend until the card says rejected. Now, if you have access to money in the bank through a card, it's as good as carrying cash. As a matter of fact, because you don't even see the cash, you are likely to spend more with your credit card. What is the solution to this? The solution to this is always have 2 or more accounts. 2 is probably enough for many. Have an account where you have money you can't access through a card, or you can't access easily. The principle here is you don't want to have access to money easily, because if you have access to money easily, you will spend it. It's a known fact. You won't overcome the temptation. So have 2 accounts, one account where you keep money for savings, and the other account where you just put little money for operations. It's better at the beginning of the month to allocate your 1,000 kwacha for food into that operating account, and that's what you just manage with. The next killer is competing with neighbors. There are people who just love to know whether their neighbors are eating beef or village chicken or whatever. And what is my neighbor driving? Is my neighbor changing clothes every day? When you compete with your neighbor, and yet your income or your budgets are not the same, you are simply destroying yourself. You don't know your neighbor. Leave your neighbor alone. People who compete with their neighbors end up killing their budgets, because when you compete with your neighbor, you will soon discover that there are neighbors you can't compete with, because today they will drive a Toyota Corolla, tomorrow they will drive a Pajero, the following day they will drive a Jaguar. Be yourself, follow your own life. Don't kill your budget by competing with other people. Now let me share a sample of a budget. And the reason I want to share this sample of a budget is because I would like to ask you actually to see how a budget can be written, a home budget, and then follow through and see. If you look on the screen, you will see that a budget for expenses, obviously. Remember, we shared already the income side. This is now the expenses. I have reflected on this budget line items of the basic expenses that I outlined. There is a column for January, a column for February, a column for March if your budget is a 3-month budget. If it's a 6-month budget, it will go up to June. If it's an annual budget, it will go up to December. But the principle in budgeting is there are months when your income may be more because of whatever sources of income you've identified. If you keep chickens, your chickens may be ready for sale in March. So in March, your income will go up. And so you will have more money in March than you had maybe in January. So you draw this budget and you balance it. Notice this thing. First of all, there are expenses that must be there because of their nature and they are listed. Now watch this. This budget is balancing. It has totals and it is mathematically correct. Under the way it would be, your total expenses now will equal your total income. As I come to the close of this presentation, let me now say this. When you have written your sources of income and you know the totals, and you have written your expenses and you know the totals, you now have a written balanced budget. You can now go ahead, implement your budget and not kill it. Once you have your written budget, rule number 1, communicate your budget to your spouse. Obviously, I'm assuming you worked at it together, but once it is now completely balanced, communicate to her. Secondly, communicate to people who are affected by your budget, if they are affected. For example, if your child is involved in the budget, you tell them this is the maximum you can pay at school. Let them know so that they can all know this home has a budget. If you were suspended from work for 1 month, for whatever reason, and it's suspension without pay, that means that 1 month you won't get your salary. So will you still count on your salary when they say it's suspension without pay? No. So then what do? You adjust. That's the flexibility of a budget. But that doesn't mean you depart from budgeting. It simply means you are flexible. Just a little warning. Do not be flexible simply because you found things in the mall and you overpurchased them. Then you say, I'm going to have a flexible budget. That's not the intention. That's killing a budget. Now, let's go to assignments. You have one big assignment. This assignment is, I would like you to list things that kill your budget. Now I'm talking about you as a person. What are the things in your own life experiences? And please do this. Remember, Finance Clinic is a clinic where we give you treatment. So I'm now giving you treatment to help you. So you go and list things that kill your budget. All of us have at one time killed a budget. There's nobody who has never killed a budget. I mean, we all kill. Some of us murder budgets every day, or every week, or every month. List down what are the things that have killed your budget in the past. List as many as you can. After you list them, I would like you then to identify at least 3 that you want to now work on and make sure those 3 things are removed from killers of your budget. For example, if it is impulse purchasing, whereby you just go and you start spending as you desire, list it after you identify it as one of the 3, and then make a resolution to say, I will avoid impulse purchasing. If it is something else, list it. But I want you to list so that you can then immediately start making progress. The purpose for Finance Clinic is for you to make progress in the way you manage your money. With these things, I know and I trust, if you follow these things, you will start being on the path to financial freedom, a path in which you will find happiness, and you will find health, and you will find social life. Your marriage may be saved because of following these sound financial principles. Till next time, call us and talk to us on the line appearing on the screen through texting. And until we see you another time, it's farewell. Thank you.